Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well today. And this video is going to be about the draft, specifically the possibility of trading down in the draft to acquire more picks, which, I mean, that's a move that the Seahawks have been known to do in recent years. Not so much the last couple, but they are a team that has been known in the past to trade down to try to acquire more picks. And it typically didn't work out that great for us, it felt like. Especially after the three big draft classes that built this team, it just kind of felt like every time we ended up regretting it. But this year, after a couple years of not doing it, I'm looking at the circumstances of the 2024 draft, and I gotta say, I think this might be a pretty good year to hit that old strategy up. So you look at the Seahawks draft picks for this upcoming class. We do have our first round pick. We have two third round picks, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh. Spotrac says we have two sevenths, but I don't think that's accurate. And if it is, it doesn't really matter because it's a seventh round pick. So I'm going with this. If it's something slightly different, then that doesn't really matter for my purposes because the notable thing here is that we do not have our second round pick because we traded it for Leonard Williams. So the idea behind a trade down would be we're at 16, we trade back some amount of picks, don't know exactly what, and we acquire a second round pick back in the trade down. You trade down with one of these teams that lost in the first or second or even conference championship round of the playoffs. They're going to give you their first and probably their second. Or is that actually what you're looking at here in terms of trades? Because I feel like trade value on draft day has gotten really, really confusing the last couple years. So I wanted to take a look and see if that was a realistic scenario. Could the Seattle Seahawks trade back from their pick in the mid-teens to a pick in like the early, mid, or late 20s and expect to get a second rounder back? So I looked at the three most recent draft classes and I actually found some stuff that I think is pretty promising. Now, before I get into the data, I want to stress this. This is completely dependent on there being a team at some point in the draft in that area, the low, mid, high 20s, that covets the 16 pick for some reason. They want a player at that slot. There's some player who is still available at 16 that they want, that they're willing to give up stuff for. So you need that. But if you can find that, one trade that caught my attention from the most recent draft, 2023, Steelers Patriots. The Steelers were desiring a move up to 14. They were sitting at 17. So the Steelers bumped up from 17 to 14. What did they give up? They moved down three spots in the middle of the first, kind of like where our pick is, and they got a fourth round pick back. So if you're talking about just moving back a couple of spots, that seems to be about the reasonable value of fourth round selection. Makes sense to me. But personally, if I'm thinking about doing this, I'm not looking to just trade back a few spots. I'm looking to trade back into, like I said, the 20s. Because I feel like I can get a player that I really want in the 20s because I think a lot of the best guard prospects will still be there. If it's Fatanu, if it's Barton, if he ends up moving up by draft day, which I think he will, Cooper Bebe. Somebody's going to be there that I covet who plays that left guard position. Or a right tackle, you move to left guard, whatever. So if you're talking about moving down bigger from 16, what could you be looking at here? Let's go back to 2022 here and this trade where the Chiefs and the Patriots made a swap of their draft picks. And it was New England, who had a pick not quite as high as ours, by the way, but in that middle area of the first round, 21, and Kansas City had the 29. So they swapped the picks. So Kansas City moves up 8 spots in the draft from the back end of the first to the middle of the first. And again, this isn't even as high as our pick. And what else did Kansas City have to give up? They gave up a third round pick and a 4th round pick. So just with this trade up, just 8 spots from 29 to 21, they had to give up a 3rd and a 4th, which in terms of value isn't quite equivalent to a 2nd round pick, but it's fairly close. We are definitely getting there. So I'm looking at something like this and I'm going, okay, I think this is believable. I think this is workable. I think you could use this as like a template for a potential trade down. You could probably get a little bit more because the 16 is probably more valuable than the 21. Now, again, it's all relative. It depends on who you're trying to trade with. But I do look at this and I go, yeah, there should be a 2nd rounder out there if somebody covets a player there. And the final thing I wanted to do was I looked at some of the stuff from 2021, 3 years ago. And again, I know this stuff moves quickly, but still fairly recent. And look what I found. We had this trade from the New York Jets and Minnesota Vikings, where the Jets had the, the Vikings had a pick at number 14 overall, and the Jets had the pick at number 23. And I believe that was actually one of the picks from the Jamal Adams trade that the Jets had. So I remember watching this play out during the draft day, thinking about that aspect of it. So I remember this trade. But the Jets, and again, we're not looking at players. We're looking at the picks, because at the time they were trading picks. They did a 1st round pick swap from 14 to 23. 14, very close to our 16. 23, that's in that mid-20s area that I was talking about. And the Vikings also got 2 extra 3rd round picks. 2 3rd round picks put together, especially when one of them is the 2nd pick, in the 3rd round, that's definitely equivalent, easily equivalent to a 2nd round pick. That's a good 2nd round pick, maybe. Jets did throw in a 4th rounder, but that doesn't offset the point here. They went from 14 to 23 and got 2 3rd round picks out of it, including a 3rd round pick that was practically a 2nd round pick anyway. So, yeah, we should expect, if we trade back from 16 to the mid-20s, which is kind of what I want to do, we should expect to be able to pick up at least, I would say at least a 2nd round pick. We're going to need to find the right team. We're going to need that right team to exist. We're going to need the right player to exist. We're going to need the draft to fall the way we want it to fall. And believe me, I don't want to do this if somebody like Brock Bowers is sitting there at 16. I don't want to trade. But if the trade is there, then it sure looks to me like going from mid-1st to late-1st is worth 2nd round plus probably a little bit more. Like maybe you could squeeze another 4th rounder out. So this is why I say the trade back is so appealing. There isn't a ton of stuff in the middle of the 1st that I'm salivating over. I feel like I can get something really good later in the 1st, and I think that bonus 2nd round pick is going to go a long way in getting me something that is useful to me. So, seems good to me. Seems workable to me. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. And, yep, getting geared up for this draft. Had to talk about trade stuff. So, let me know what y'all think.